Imagine that you really want to do science, but you don't have the right to higher education. Despite everything, you manage to outwit the system and not only work what you want, but also receive the Nobel Prize for your discoveries. This is the story of Marie Curie, the first woman with a Nobel Prize and the first scientist with Nobel Prizes in two different fields of science, physics and chemistry. Let me tell you the details now. Maria Salome Skłodowska was born on November 7, 1867 in Poland, part of the then Russian Empire. Maria showed an interest in science from a young age and did great in school. When she was only 10 years old, the first great tragedy in her life befell her. Her mother died of tuberculosis. Maria continued to study hard and became the best student in her high school. Unfortunately, she could not enroll in higher education, since according to the then order in Poland, only men had this right. However, this did not stop Maria and she enrolled in the illegal flying university in Warsaw, where she studied secretly. 2 years later, her sister Bronislawa left for Paris. Maria moved in with her and continued her education at the Sorbonne. At that time, the reality in Paris was not easy at all. Maria did not have much money and was barely surviving. She often got sick and even fainted from hunger. However, the difficulties did not stop her in 1893. She graduated with a master's degree in physics, and a year later in mathematics. She began her career with research in the field of magnetism, and while looking for a laboratory to work in, she met the French physicist Marie Curie. The two of them became a great team. They liked each other very much, and on July 26, 1895, you guessed it, they got married. One day, Marie Curie began experimenting with uranium ore and discovered that it emitted continuous rays even after the uranium was removed. This led her to the idea that the ore contained new radioactive elements. So over the next 4 to 5 years, Marie and Pierre processed nearly 8 tons of uranium ore in search of new chemical elements. And they discovered them from 1 ton of ore. They managed to isolate the belied 0.1 gram of radium, an element that they believed could destroy tumor cells faster than healthy ones. The two also discovered another element, which they named polonium in honor of Marie's homeland, Poland. In 1903, Marie Curie and her husband Pierre and the French physicist Henri received the Nobel Prize in Physics. Initially, Marie was not included in the award because she was a woman. However, Pierre stood up for her and explained that everything was the result of her research. Thus, Marie Curie deservedly became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and 8 years later she also received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the discovery of radium and polonium. Marie and Pierre could have patented their discovery and profited from it, but instead they gave it to humanity. A gesture with which they proved their dedication to science and people. However, these professional successes were overshadowed when Pierre Curie died in an accident in 1906. The loss for Marie was enormous. Despite this, she did not stop working. And when the University of Paris offered her Pierre's position, she accepted. Thus, in addition to his worthy replacement, Marie Curie also became the first female professor at the Sorbonne. However, this, along with the defended doctorate, scientific developments and the Nobel Prize, was not enough for the French academics. In 1911 they refused to accept Marie's candidacy, arguing that the French Academy of Sciences did not have women members. Marie continued her research, but she needed a new laboratory to study radioactivity. She set about establishing the Radevi Institute, but her work was interrupted by the outbreak of World War I. Then Marie abandoned her research and went to the front, where she ensured that portable X-ray machines were available in field hospitals and in some of the vehicles. In this way, she contributed to saving even more lives. After the war, Marie returned to work, but her health gradually deteriorated. She did not suspect that this was due to prolonged exposure to radiation without protective equipment. On July 4, 1934, Marie Curie was killed by her own discovery, and the diagnosis was an extremely rare disease, aplastic anemia. Marie Curie was buried next to her husband in Paris, and in 1995 their remains were moved to the Pantheon along with other important figures of France. The 96th element of the periodic table is also named after Marie-Pierre Curie. Today, in the National Library in Paris, you can see Marie Curie's tools and notebooks, but only under certain conditions, because they are radioactive and will remain so for at least 1,500 years. However, the importance of her research, which changed the human understanding of radioactivity, will remain much longer. Among other things, with her perseverance and revolutionary discoveries, Marie Curie completely changed the way women in science are viewed. In fact, she simply wanted to live in a better world. A desire that she expressed